maybe
So, Ricardo, let me ask you this: is there a scenario in which the High Court, decides to rule against Trump on the 14th Amendment and birthright citizenship, and yet circumscribes the federal district court's ability to issue national stays?
No, I don't think so. Again, because the court can only answer the issues that are before it. And there was a big point made yesterday, right, that the issue of the validity of the executive order itself had not been brought up to them. And to a certain extent, General Sauer was chastised by liberal justices for not bringing it up, right? Basically saying purposely you're not bringing it up because you're going to lose, right? So they cannot decide this on the merits of the case. So they have to have a narrow decision on whether national or universal injunctions are allowed and under what circumstances they should be allowed, or whether they are not allowed. And the vehicle, well, they're not allowed under this context, okay? The only way they could be allowed would be through a class action lawsuit where you have certified a class of plaintiffs nationwide that are affected by this, and then a national injunction could be issued, which, again, Sauer sort of hedged against, saying, well, I'm not sure that, we wouldn't oppose this. He was talking out of both sides of his mouth, saying, well, the only way they can get a national or universal injunction is they certify a class, right? But at the same time, he was saying they didn't think they could qualify a class.
I understand. So why do you think the administration's attorneys decided to take, to look for this fight, right? I mean, on this issue of the national stays, why didn't they just sort of dither and dawdle and basically let the delays in the legal system fester while they're trying to carry out their policy? I mean, I know they kind of had good luck when they took an analogous gamble procedurally when they went to the Supreme Court and asked them to rule about the issue of the executive privilege, right? Whether the illegal crap that Trump did in his first term, whether it qualifies as something that he was immune to because he was serving as president. He won that. Shouldn't have, in my opinion, but did. Do they think, hey, we have the right, we have a court that's going to be sympathetic to us, and we can get this big sweeping decision that's going to help us in all sorts of other ways and expand executive power? Or is there something else or are they just focused on the birthright citizenship issue?
Look, I from what I heard yesterday, they have been hit with 40 universal injunctions, right? Which is an absolute record, but it's also an absolute record the amount of executive orders he has signed in the first 3 months. And to me, and even though nobody has addressed it, and or at least I haven't found any articles that address it, the character of these executive orders are really, really pushing the envelope of the existing law and existing precedent. The enactment of the Enemies Act, right? The declaration of these gangs as a terrorist group. All of those things are pushing the envelope of what is allowed under the law. And they have been challenged on them, and they have received 40 injunctions, universal injunctions. So it's really, in their view, is tying their hands. They're not able to move forward on this. So what they want to attack is the concept of the injunction itself, to say, we are the executive power. Did we have, was it that Fidel Castro, or was it a U.S. president that says if the president does it, it cannot be illegal?
Both.
Both.
It was Ricardo Nixon, I believe.
Yeah. So which by the way, that could be subject matter of a whole different discussion. But anyway, because it deals with executive power. But I think their position is, if we can get these people off our case, which by the way is something that the opposite party has used very effectively during Obama and during Biden in terms of getting national injunctions or universal injunctions against presidential executive orders. So if they can get this to go in their favor, then they have the freedom to continue to impose these rules and these orders without any restriction whatsoever. Now, Sotomayor had a great example that should send a chill down the spine of conservative voters, commentators, and Second Amendment rights proponents, supporters, which is, Sotomayor said, what if the president issues an executive order and orders the military to go confiscate every private gun in the U.S.? What is the solution for that? Right? Mm-hmm. It cannot be a national injunction, universal injunction against them, right? So while this works itself out through the court, they're going out there and taking guns away from people. It's clearly unconstitutional. And what is your solution? That just let it work out through the system? And Sauer, by the way, said a number of times, he used the word percolate, which is an interesting word. You need to let this percolate through the system. Yeah, it's a slow percolation that they want, but they want to have the ability in the meantime to enforce this, which the result would be, in my view, that then, which I think is the objective, people would self-deport.
Ricardo, are executive orders constitutional?
Yes, they are.
Why?
Well, first of all, because the great General Washington used them, and we know he could do no wrong. But no, as an executive, you have a right. Now, I'm going to ask you, Ted, because I don't know you well enough, but I know my friend Scott Stantis. I'm going to ask him this question, which is going to be a softball for him.
Okay.
Who is the guy before modern times that broke the record for executive orders?
I'm going to guess Lincoln?
No.
No?
No, it wasn't Lincoln.
Oh, okay. Tell me.
So this is in the 19th century, right?
No, 20th century too. I was trying, when I said modern times, I was saying, let's say from
FDR?
Oh, it has to be
FDR broke the record of all times. Okay.
Well, he was in office forever.
Yeah. Yes. So he had and it was wartime, so he had over 3,000. Let me see here. 3,725.
Jeez.
An average of 307.
And his opponents thought he was very dictatorial.
Yeah, right. But prior to that, for a number of times, for a number of years, there were few instances where more than 200 executive orders were issued by any one president.
But how are they constitutional? I mean, I don't understand.
No, but let me get to this because it
seems like one dude passing a law, right?
Yeah. Who was the first president to break the 1,000 benchmark? Let me put that.
Ooh. Jefferson.
No. Teddy Roosevelt.
It was Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah.
That's not surprising. Yeah. I mean, you think of his temperament, you think.
Right. And he used it mostly for conservation and the national parks, that kind of stuff. But also
but he was also very popular. He had a compliant Congress for the most part. I mean, I just don't see. I mean, again, I guess I just don't see in the Constitution where executive orders come from.
No, but again,
what's the validity?
It's the executive branch, right? and they have the ability to issue orders that follow the law, the enactment of a particular law or a particular power that is conferred upon the president.
Or you could try to overturn an entire amendment to the Constitution with a stroke of a pen.
You could try to, but then that's why you have judicial review to basically determine whether that's constitutional or not. Now, Obama used executive power quite effectively for the Obamacare legislation, et cetera, which of course was challenged a number of times
Obamacare passed through Congress. It was a bill.
Yeah, but there were certain things, for example, taxes and how Medicare costs were sort of wrapped into that, and a number of things that Obama did that were challenged and went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the challenge lost in it, right? But again, if your executive order is within the bounds of the specific law or constitutional provision that you're basing on, all you're doing is acting as the executive, right? You are giving orders to particularly.
I see the validity of if you're clarifying policy or you're just saying within the bounds, this is how we're going to execute this law or that law. I get that. But, what we've seen in recent years is really it's legislation.
Sure. Absolutely. We saw it with the student loan under Biden. Right. That was done by executive orders and it was challenged in court. And again, and people attribute this to the dysfunction of Congress, right? Congress is unable to get together on certain things. Therefore, the executive branch is stepping in to try to legislate on behalf of Congress. And I think there's a lot of that going around. I absolutely think there's a lot of that going around.
Well, when we invited you on the show, we promised we'd keep you only 30 minutes. We've lied about that.
Oh, wow.
Like a politician.
But I do have, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, Ricardo, is that off mic, we've talked about the future and where we are as a country and where we're headed. The last couple of podcasts, I have to admit, Ted and I have been dour, to say the least, about the future and so on. You have been optimistic, and can we, if you could leave us with some optimism, that would be super duper, because and rare for this podcast recently. But it just seems to me that there seems to be a full-throated assault on the Constitution, on political norms, and I don't see us recovering in 4 years from this. That if you have a Solicitor General, for instance, more specific to our discussion, say that he may or may not, the administration may or may not adhere to a universal injunction, that's chilling, and it's supposed to be. If I had to read the tea leaves correctly, and I think I am. Where's your optimism coming from? And are you insane?
Yes.
You know it, right?
My wife can attest to the fact that I am insane. No, look, I have great faith in our institutions. They are under assault. Tradition is under assault. Norms are under assault. And by the way, from all parties, one of the things that upset me the most, there are two things from the Obama administration that offended me. One was Obama being a constitutional lawyer and professor, criticizing and taking away the legitimacy of Supreme Court decisions when they went against them, right? Rather than saying, I disagree with that decision, it was like, they're absolutely wrong, and the only way they decided that is because of politics. I think it's wrong for a president at that level to do that, because it takes away from the credibility that we as voters give the institution. The second one was from Obama, and sort of related, when Eric Holder testified before Congress about the targeted attacks overseas of terrorists and killing them, right? Ordering their death. and he justified it, as being a clear and present danger, and the administration had the ability to order their extrajudicial execution. And they followed up with a question: well, if that individual is an American citizen, overseas, and his response was, yes, we're still justified, which is chilling it to itself. But after the hearing, one of the congressmen followed up with a written question: what if a U.S. citizen on U.S. soil?
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, remember that? And his reply was, yes, we're still justified, which is absolutely chilling. And there were few, I think Tribe was one of the few constitutional scholars that raised his voice, but most were silent on this. It's like, what? You are basically throwing away the entire judicial process to arrest somebody and put them before a court and declare them guilty, right? So that's been happening on both sides of the aisle, so to speak. But I still believe that as a country, as a whole, we have very strong institutions. They will survive the attack, all right? I think we will find a more level approach to these things eventually, right? We're in for a very hectic 2 or 3 years with a lot of these things going before the Supreme Court and a lot of arguments going back and forth. But having come and having grown up in a totalitarian regime and seeing how that really works, I just don't see the U.S., the populace in the U.S. capitulating to the level they would have to capitulate in terms of the voters, in terms of the armed forces, in terms of the courts, capitulating to the point that we would not survive.
Okay. On that note, we will let you go. This was Ricardo Aparicio, and the bars of Alabama and Florida, also the U.S. Supreme Court bar, of which he was inducted recently. If you want to contact Ricardo, go to Aparicio Professional Advisors, LLC. You have a webpage or something?
Yeah, I do.
An OnlyFans, something?
And LinkedIn. You can find me.
And he's providing consulting.
That may be next, though.
Well, you do what you got to do. He's providing consulting services for real estate and construction industries. Ricardo, thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And Scott, thank you.
It's a real pleasure.
Take care.
Back anytime.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay.
I think that wraps it up. I think we had a robust conversation. And also, that was the thing. Ricardo lived near here. Every few Sundays, go over there and have a cigar and a little bit of rum and just talk. And I got to tell you, 90% of the time he was just telling me stuff, and I had no idea about. So I was probably the best informed editorial cartoonist in the country for that short period of time when I had access to Ricardo on a fairly regular basis. Because I'd walk over there, and I really would, Ted, just go, what the hell does this mean? And he'd lay it out, and in this is what's going on.
Yeah, I love how he does that. It's like, boom, 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 boom. Yeah.
Yeah. Not versus
so easy a cartoonist can understand it.
Indeed. Well, I'm glad you're back. Why don't we wrap things up now, and we will. Is that okay?
That sounds fine.
Yeah, because you're still unpacking.
Yes, that's true. Thanks everyone for joining us. Check us out. Please hit the subscribe button. Please hit like button. Please share us on your social media and with your friends. Very important. Also a reminder of my new book, What's Left. Never mind the Democrats. Here's what's left. It's just like what it sounds like. It defines what the left is and what it should ask for going forward and outside of the Democratic Party.
It's awesome, by the way. It's a really good book. If you're concerned or interested at all in the future of the left in the United States, that you have to read this book.
And there's no future for the United States itself without a left, I think.
Oh, of course.
Anyway, all right, we're out of here as usual. Scott Stantis does the vocals in the closing credits.
I can't do Celia Cruz because that's, again, Ricardo turned me on to Azúcar. There we go. That's as close as you're ever going to get to Scott Stantis imitating Celia Cruz. But Thank you all. Thank you again, Ricardo, Ted. Thanks again. And until next time.